Welcome, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready. Where are we headed this time?
Well, we've got a mountain of material about the history of India. Wikipedia, scholarly articles, even some old travel journals. It's quite a lot to sift through.
Yeah, India's history is incredibly rich and complex. Millennia of empires, religions, cultural shifts. It's a lot to cover.
So how do we even approach this? I mean, where's the starting point in a story that goes back millions of years?
Well, I think we have to start at the very beginning. Prehistoric India.
Okay, so before the Indus Valley Civilization, before all the empires we usually learn about, what's there?
Believe it or not, there's evidence suggesting humans were living on the Indian subcontinent, potentially 2.2 million years ago.
2.2 million. Wow, that's almost unfathomable.
Yeah.
What kind of evidence are we talking about?
Archaeological discoveries, mainly. Stone tools unearthed in what is now Pakistan. Evidence of Homo erectus moving through the region.
So we're talking really, really early humans. Do we know anything about their lives beyond just those tools?
We do. The Bhimbetka rock shelters in central India offer a fascinating glimpse.
Oh, I've heard of those. They have those amazing cave paintings, right?
Exactly. Some of those paintings date back to 8000 BCE or even earlier.
Wow, what kind of things did they depict?
Scenes from daily life, hunting, animals, even what could be mythical creatures.
It's like looking directly into the past, seeing how they saw the world. Incredible.
It is. And speaking of looking into the past, did you know that the Indian population today is incredibly diverse genetically?
I did read something about that. How does that fit into this whole prehistoric picture?
Well, it suggests that there were multiple waves of migration and settlement happening over those thousands of years.
So, not just one group of early humans, but different groups coming in, mixing, and creating this unique genetic tapestry.
Exactly. In fact, India's genetic diversity is second only to Africa, which hints at all these fascinating founder events.
Founder events. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure. Imagine small groups breaking off from larger populations, heading out and forming new settlements. Over time, those groups develop their own unique genetic traits and even cultural practices.
That makes sense. And then add in things like endogamy, right?
Yeah.
Marrying within specific groups.
Exactly. All those factors contribute to the remarkable diversity we see in India today.
Okay, so from these early humans, we jump ahead to a period that always fascinates me, the Indus Valley Civilization. What makes it so unique and intriguing?
Well, for one, they were contemporaries of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, flourishing around 3300 to 1900 BCE.
So not just some small settlements, but a full-blown civilization, right?
Oh, yeah. They built sophisticated cities like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dhalavira. These cities were spread across a huge area.
In present-day India and Pakistan, right? I've seen pictures of their city planning. Amazing.
Their urban planning was remarkable for the time. Grid layouts, complex drainage systems, standardized weights and measures, even public baths.
Wow. Really shows how advanced they were. But there's still so much we don't know about them, right?
The biggest mystery is their writing system. We see it everywhere, on artifacts, seals, but we haven't been able to decipher it.
It's like this giant puzzle with tantalizing clues, but no key to unlock all its secrets.
That's a great way to put it. And to add another layer to this puzzle, around 1900 BCE, these thriving cities were abandoned.
Abandoned? Why?
Most likely due to a major climate shift. Scholars believe a persistent drought forced the population to disperse.
So even a civilization as advanced as the Indus Valley couldn't escape the power of nature. What happened in the aftermath? Who filled that void?
This is where we see the arrival of the Indo-Aryan tribes. They migrated from Central Asia into the Indian subcontinent.
And this marks the start of the Vedic period.
Yes, named after the Vedas, the sacred texts that were composed during this era.
The Vedas. Those are fundamental to Hinduism, aren't they?
Exactly. They contain hymns, prayers, rituals, and philosophical ideas that would profoundly shape Indian thought for centuries to come.
This period also sees a major shift in technology, right? The Iron Age begins in India.
Absolutely. The use of iron transforms warfare, agriculture, daily life. It's a game changer. And we also see the emergence of the Kuru kingdom around 1200 BCE.
The first state-level society in ancient India, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. And it's during this period that we also see the beginnings of the Varna system.
The foundation for India's social classes. A very complex and often debated topic, even today.
Right. The Varna system, with its four main classes, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras.
Priests and scholars, warriors, merchants, and laborers. It's a system that would evolve over centuries and eventually solidify into the caste system.
And it's important to remember that the Vedic period lays the groundwork for these social structures that have had a profound impact on Indian society.
So we have these new social structures emerging, and then around 500 BCE, India undergoes another period of significant change.
This is what's known as the second urbanization. New cities spring up along the Ganges Plain, and alongside this urban growth comes a period of intense intellectual and spiritual ferment.
It sounds like a time of questioning and exploration. What were some of the key ideas that emerged?
It was a time when people began to question the existing Vedic traditions. This led to the rise of new philosophies and religions like Jainism.
Jainism, founded by Mahavira, with its emphasis on nonviolence and the liberation of the soul.
Right, and of course you have the emergence of Buddhism.
Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. His teachings about suffering, enlightenment, and compassion would spread far beyond India's borders.
Exactly. Both Jainism and Buddhism gained significant followings and had a profound impact on Indian thought and culture.
So you have these new religious ideas circulating, new cities expanding, and then you have the rise of the Nanda Empire with its vast army and war elephants.
The Nanda Empire, although relatively short-lived, establishes a large, centralized kingdom in northern India, and their reign sets the stage for a pretty dramatic encounter, the arrival of Alexander the Great in 326 BCE.
Now that's a cliffhanger. Alexander the Great's entry into India, a clash of civilizations. What a way to end part 1 of our deep dive. We'll have to pick up the story from there in our next segment.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Indian history. Last time, we left off with Alexander the Great marching into India.
Right, a real clash of titans. What happened next? Did Alexander conquer all of India?
Well, not quite. His campaigns were militarily successful, but he didn't establish lasting control over India.
So he came, he saw, he conquered, and then he left.
Pretty much. But his arrival had a big impact. It disrupted the existing power structures in India.
Kind of shook things up, created a power vacuum.
Exactly. And into that vacuum stepped a new power, the Mauryan Empire.
The Mauryans. They're a pretty big deal in Indian history, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Founded by Chandragupta Maurya around 322 BCE, it's considered one of the largest and most powerful empires in ancient India.
How big are we talking?
They controlled a vast territory, stretching from modern-day Afghanistan in the west all the way to parts of Bangladesh in the east.
That's a huge empire.
Yeah.
What was the secret to their success?
Well, Chandragupta Maurya was a brilliant strategist and military leader. He took advantage of the political instability after Alexander's departure to consolidate his power in northern India. He also built a strong administrative system and a powerful army.
But it's his grandson, Ashoka, who really captures people's imagination. He's often considered one of the greatest rulers in Indian history. What makes him so special?
Ashoka is a fascinating figure. He started as a pretty ruthless conqueror, but after witnessing the horrors of war during the Kalinga campaign, he underwent a profound transformation.
What happened? Did he have some kind of epiphany?
You could say that. He embraced Buddhism and dedicated his life to promoting peace, nonviolence, and what's known as Dharma righteous conduct.
So he had this dramatic change of heart and decided to use his power for good.
Exactly. He's famous for his rock and pillar edicts. These edicts, inscribed with his messages of peace, tolerance, and social welfare, are scattered throughout his former empire.
So he essentially used his empire as a platform to broadcast his message of peace and compassion.
Yes. And his edicts weren't just empty words. He actually implemented practical policies, like establishing hospitals for both humans and animals, planting trees along roads for shade, even encouraging vegetarianism.
That's incredible. It's amazing to think about a ruler over 2,000 years ago promoting ideas that are still so relevant today.
Ashoka's influence extended far beyond his own time. He's credited with playing a pivotal role in the spread of Buddhism throughout India and into Southeast Asia.
A true champion of peace and compassion. From the Mauryans and their focus on Dharma, we move on to another remarkable period, the Gupta Empire. What makes them stand out?
The Gupta Empire, which rose to power around 320 CE, is often called the Golden Age of India. And for good reason. It wasn't just about military power. It was a time of incredible cultural, intellectual, and scientific flourishing.
So what were some of the hallmarks of this golden age? What made it so golden?
Think of it as a kind of Indian Renaissance. During this time, we see a remarkable blossoming of art, literature, and science.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. In literature, you have the works of Kalidasa, often considered the Shakespeare of India. His plays and poetry are still celebrated today.
What about other fields?
Well, in mathematics and astronomy, we have figures like Aryabhata, who made groundbreaking contributions. He did a lot of work in trigonometry and even calculated pi with remarkable accuracy.
Impressive. Any other notable achievements?
He also proposed that the Earth rotates on its axis. Centuries before that idea became widely accepted in the West.
Wow, that's incredible. And what about art and architecture during this period?
The Guptas were huge patrons of the arts. We see the development of a distinctive style of sculpture and temple architecture known for its elegance and intricate details.
Oh, yeah. This is also the period when the concept of zero and the decimal system were developed, right?
You got it. The Indian numeral system, with its use of zero and place value, was revolutionary. It allowed for much more complex calculations and really changed the face of mathematics.
It was eventually adopted by the Arabs and then transmitted to Europe, becoming the foundation for modern math. A pretty significant contribution, to say the least.
For sure. So the Guptas weren't just focused on building their empire. They also fostered this incredible environment of intellectual curiosity and creativity.
What eventually led to their decline?
Well, like most empires, it was a combination of factors. Internal power struggles, invasions from the Hunas, and economic pressures all contributed to their downfall.
But their legacy lived on, right?
Absolutely. Their influence on art, science, and culture continued to shape India long after their empire was gone.
After the Guptas, India entered a period of fragmentation, with regional kingdoms vying for power. And then, around the 8th century CE, a new force arrives on the scene, Islam.
Yes, the arrival of Islam is a major turning point in Indian history. It introduces a new religion and a new culture to the already incredibly diverse landscape of the Indian subcontinent.
So how did this new cultural and religious force integrate into the existing social structures in India? Was it a smooth process?
It was definitely a complex process. There were periods of conflict and periods of cooperation. The establishment of the Delhi Sultanate in 1206 CE by rulers of Turkic origin marks a big shift in the political landscape of northern India.
So Islamic rule is established in northern India. How did this affect the existing religious and social structures?
It's important to note that the Delhi Sultanate didn't force mass conversions. Hinduism remained the dominant religion for the vast majority of the population.
So two major religions coexisting. Did this lead to any kind of blending of cultures?
Absolutely. We see the emergence of a distinct Indo-Islamic architectural style, which blended elements of both Islamic and Hindu traditions. We also see the development of new languages, like Urdu.
Urdu. That's a beautiful language. I know it has influences from both Persian and Hindi.
Right. It became the language of the court and literature during this period.
So a lot of cultural exchange and fusion happening. While these changes are taking place in the north, what's happening in the south?
In the south, we see the rise of the Vijayanagara Empire. They were a powerful force, resisting the advances of the Delhi Sultanate and acting as a bastion of Hindu culture and traditions.
Sounds like they were a force to be reckoned with. What were some of their notable accomplishments?
They were known for their military strength, their well-organized administration, and their vibrant cultural and religious life. They were big patrons of the arts, literature, and temple building.
And they left behind some impressive architectural legacies, right?
Definitely. The ruins of their capital city, Hampi, are now a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
So they essentially held the line against these new influences and preserved Hindu traditions in the south.
Yes, they ensured the continuation of Hindu religious and cultural practices in the south, creating a really distinct cultural landscape in that region.
A time of great change and resilience. Were there any new religious movements that emerged during this period?
Yes. This period witnessed the emergence of the Bhakti movement. It was a powerful spiritual force that really swept across India, transforming religious expression and challenging traditional hierarchies.
What were some of the key ideas behind the Bhakti movement?
The Bhakti movement emphasized a much more personal and emotional approach to religion. It was all about devotion, a direct connection with God, regardless of ritual or social status.
So a more egalitarian and accessible approach to spirituality.
Exactly. Bhakti saints like Kabir and Mirabai wrote beautiful poetry and songs expressing their love and longing for God. Their words resonated with people from all walks of life.
And this was also the time when Sikhism emerged, right?
Yes. In the 15th century, Guru Nanak founded Sikhism. His teachings combined elements of Hinduism and Islam, creating a distinct spiritual path.
What were some of the key differences between Sikhism and the existing religions?
Sikhism rejected the caste system, emphasized ethical conduct, and stressed a direct connection with God without the need for priests or rituals.
So, a lot of new ideas and religious expressions emerging during this time. It seems like India has always been a place where different cultures and beliefs have interacted and mingled.
It's true. India's history is a testament to its ability to absorb and adapt to new influences, constantly evolving and creating something new.
And just when we think we've got a handle on things, a new power arrives on the scene. The Mughals.
The Mughals, they're a fascinating dynasty. Their arrival in the 16th century ushers in a new era of grandeur, artistic brilliance, and political consolidation. But we'll have to save that exploration for our next segment.
We're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into Indian history. Last time, we were on the cusp of the Mughal Empire. They really left their mark, didn't they?
They did. I mean, Babur founded the dynasty in 1526, but it was under his successors that the Mughal Empire truly flourished. They ruled over much of India for centuries.
And their legacy is visible everywhere you look, from the architecture to the food.
You're right. Think of the Taj Mahal.
Ah, yes, the Taj Mahal. It's the ultimate symbol of Mughal grandeur, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's more than just a beautiful building. It represents their incredible architectural skills and artistic vision. Shah Jahan built it as a mausoleum for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal.
It's a testament to their love story, but also to the cultural blending that was happening under the Mughals.
Definitely. The Mughal period saw a flowering of art, music, literature. They brought together Persian, Central Asian, and Indian traditions, creating something unique and vibrant.
And that fusion wasn't limited to the arts, was it?
No, it extended to many aspects of life. Even language. Urdu, which blends Persian and Hindi, became the language of the court and of literature during the Mughal era.
It's a beautiful language.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't forget about the food. Mughal cuisine is so rich and flavorful.
Oh, absolutely. So many dishes we associate with Indian food today have roots in Mughal culinary traditions. Biryani, kebabs, those rich curries. They love their spices, introduce new cooking techniques. It's a delicious legacy.
It sounds like it was an incredible time to be in India. But ruling such a vast empire with so much diversity couldn't have been easy.
Of course, there were challenges. Rebellions, wars with rival powers like the Marathas, even conflicts within the Mughal dynasty itself. Keeping such a diverse population unified was a constant challenge. Different religions, languages, customs.
So how did they approach that challenge? Did they manage to create a sense of unity?
Well, one of the most notable things about the Mughals, especially under Emperor Akbar, was their policy of religious tolerance. He abolished the jizya, a tax on non-Muslims, and actually encouraged dialogue between different religious groups.
That's remarkable for that time.
It was. He even went as far as creating a new religion, Din-e-Ilahi, which tried to blend elements of Hinduism, Islam, and other faiths.
Wow. He sounds like quite the innovator. But even with these efforts, the Mughal Empire eventually declined, right?
Yes, like all empires do. In the 18th century, their power weakened, and regional powers like the Marathas asserted their independence.
And that coincided with the arrival of the Europeans, didn't it?
Exactly. The arrival of European powers, starting with the Portuguese in the late 15th century and then the Dutch, British, and French, really changed the course of Indian history.
It all started with trade, I believe.
It did. They were initially drawn to India for spices and other valuable goods. But those ambitions grew, and soon they were vying for political and military control.
And we know the British, through the East India Company, eventually gained a foothold in India.
Yes, the East India Company. What started as a trading company slowly but surely acquired more and more power, exploiting rivalries between Indian kingdoms and taking advantage of the weakened Mughal Empire.
But their rule wasn't without resistance. Didn't the Indians rise up against the British?
They did. In 1857, the Sepoy Mutiny, also known as the First War of Indian Independence, broke out. It was a bloody and brutal conflict.
What sparked it?
There were many underlying causes: resentment against British policies, economic exploitation, cultural insensitivity. All those frustrations boiled over.
And what was the outcome? Were they successful in ending British rule?
The British ultimately suppressed the rebellion, but it had a huge impact. It marked a turning point in their relationship with India.
So even in defeat, the uprising had a long-lasting effect.
Absolutely. The East India Company was dissolved, and the British Crown took direct control of India. It was the beginning of the British Raj.
And that led to a whole new set of challenges and resistance, didn't it?
It did. The British implemented reforms and policies to solidify their control, but at the same time, the Indian nationalist movement was gaining strength.
Groups like the Indian National Congress emerged, demanding more autonomy and self-rule for India.
Exactly. And the movement gained even more momentum in the 20th century under leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolent resistance, satyagraha, was incredibly powerful.
He really captured the world's attention with his approach to resistance. It's inspiring to see how he mobilized the masses and challenged the British Empire without resorting to violence.
His strategy of peaceful protests, civil disobedience, boycotts, it really put pressure on the British government and exposed the injustices of colonial rule.
And finally, in 1947, India achieved independence. A historic moment, the culmination of years of struggle and sacrifice.
A moment of celebration, but also a time of great upheaval and sorrow. The partition of India, creating Pakistan as a separate Muslim-majority nation, was accompanied by widespread violence and displacement.
A tragic chapter, but one that reminds us of the complexities of identity and nationhood. But through it all, India endured.
And that's what makes studying Indian history so fascinating. It's a story of resilience, adaptation, and constant transformation. From the earliest humans to the rise and fall of empires, from the arrival of new religions to the fight for independence.
And that's what we've tried to capture in this deep dive. It's just a glimpse into the vast tapestry of Indian history.
We've only scratched the surface, really, but hopefully it sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to explore further. There's so much more to discover.
Yeah.
The art, the literature, the philosophies.
So keep questioning, keep exploring, keep diving deep. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.